Behind every brutal murder lies a pattern, a ritual, almost, a method the killer refines over time. Some stalk for days, others strike in minutes, but all of them repeat. This is a modus operandi, the distinct, almost signature behavior that serial killers use to select, lure, and kill their victims. From Bundy's fake cast to BTK's twisted projects, from Israel Key's kill kits to Dahmer's obsession with control, these weren't random crimes. These were rehearsed, repeated, and refined. And in many cases, it was that very pattern that exposed them. Welcome back to Prison Stories. In this video, we're going inside the minds of killers who weren't just dangerous, they were deliberate. Let's take a closer look at how their routines, behaviors, and rituals turned into the trail that eventually brought them down. Ted Bundy, the charming predator. Many believe it was Ted Bundy's charm that helped him lure victims, but that's only half the truth. What truly disarmed people wasn't his charisma, it was his performance. Bundy didn't just talk his way into trust. He acted his way in. His victims weren't people he knew. They weren't exes or acquaintances. They were strangers, chosen specifically to feed his urge to kill. With a fake cast on his arm or a limp in his walk, he made himself appear harmless, someone in need of help. And in that single moment of false vulnerability, his victims let their guard down. He didn't seduce them. He manipulated their sympathy. Bundy had a very specific type. White, brunette women, typically in their late teens or 20s, often with hair parted down the middle. Many of his victims looked eerily similar, as if he was reenacting the same scene again and again. He hunted in plain sight, college campuses, libraries, parking lots, calm, confident. His usual approach was asking for help lifting books or loading something into his beige Volkswagen Beetle. The setup was always innocent. The outcome, anything but. Once the victim was in the car or isolated, that's when the mask dropped. Bundy didn't use guns or knives. He preferred blunt force. He'd knock his victims unconscious with a crowbar or another object, often hidden in his car. Then, he handcuffed them and drove to a remote area. There, the real horror began. Bundy raped, strangled, and mutilated his victims. But even after death, his obsession didn't end. He sometimes returned to the bodies. He revisited crime scenes and was even involved in necrophilia. Bundy once said murder was about possession. They are part of you. The victim becomes a part of you, and you two are one forever. His methods weren't fueled by charm. They were grounded in control, the fake injuries, the calm demeanor, the carefully selected type, the repetitive setup. All of it formed a disturbingly effective modus operandi, allowed him to kill across multiple states while evading capture for years. But even serial killers don't always stick to their own patterns. In the final chapter of his spree, during the Chi Omega murders in Florida, Bundy broke his usual pattern. No manipulation, no careful planning. He entered a sorority house in a frenzy and brutally attacked 4 women in their sleep, killing 2. It was chaos, unlike anything he'd done before. A spree, not a strategy. It reflected his unraveling, desperation overtaking precision. Ted Bundy built his crimes around control, but in the end, he lost it. BTK, a killer obsessed with fantasies. Dennis Rader didn't stumble upon his victims. He selected them. He admitted it himself in court. There was a process. He would watch them from a distance, learn their routines, break into their homes to study the layout. Sometimes, he'd even leave and come back days later, waiting for the perfect moment. The thrill began long before the murder. For Rader, stalking was part of the ritual, part of the fantasy. He didn't target victims out of rage or opportunity. He wanted control, total domination. His crimes were not impulsive. They were plotted from start to finish. The name he gave himself, BTK, spelled out clearly: bind, torture, kill. That was his modus operandi. He didn't rape his victims. He didn't even seem interested in intimacy. The murder itself was the goal. The slow buildup, the bondage, the terror, the final act of strangulation. He later said he enjoyed the fear, that it made him feel powerful. To him, murder wasn't just about ending life. It was about owning it. Like Bundy, BTK had a signature. But while Bundy lured strangers with charm, Rader stalked them until he couldn't hold back anymore. And once he struck, he made sure they couldn't scream, couldn't run, couldn't fight back. That was the point. BTK's killings weren't crimes of passion. They were rehearsed performances. And every part of it, from the moment he picked a name to the way he left crime scenes, screamed one thing: this was never random. It was calculated and cold to the core. Jeffrey Dahmer, the killer who wanted company. Behind the faded walls of his Milwaukee apartment, Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't just hunting people. He was chasing silence, control, and companionship. Many believed Dahmer carefully selected his victims, that he had a racial preference or targeted specific types. But the truth is far less calculated. His victims were simply the people who crossed his path at gay bars, clubs, bus stops, places he frequented often. Most were young, alone, and struggling financially. They weren't chosen for their background. They were chosen because they said yes. Dahmer didn't have Ted Bundy's charm or confidence. He wasn't slick with words. Instead, he used money, a small offer, $50 or so, in exchange for private photos. That was his lure. And once they stepped inside his apartment, they almost never left. He wasn't interested in inflicting pain. He wasn't even interested in sex in conventional sense. In fact, he rarely raped his victims. What drew him was their body, physical beauty, youth, and stillness. He didn't want partners. He wanted possession. Dahmer admitted trying to create zombies by drilling into skulls and injecting acid or boiling water, hoping the men would stay alive, but unable to leave or resist. It was an experiment in control, in manufacturing loyalty. And when death came, he stayed close. He'd keep the corpses, pose them, photograph them, sleep beside them, preserve body parts in his fridge and freezer. And yes, he committed necrophilia, not driven by desire, but by the fear of being left alone. It wasn't rage. It wasn't hate. Dahmer killed to keep people with him, to stop them from abandoning him, because in his twisted mind, a lifeless body that stayed was better than a living one that walked away. When police finally caught him, they walked into an apartment that looked like a slaughterhouse designed by someone with a calm voice and a numb soul. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't just kill. He erased lives to fill a void and tried to keep their silence forever. Israel Keyes, the serial killer who lived like a ghost. Israel Keyes' modus operandi was the most unusual, as he was not driven by rage, rejection, or revenge. He killed because he wanted to, and he was frighteningly good at it. What made Keyes terrifying wasn't just the murders. It was the way he planned them. He would fly across states, rent a car, and drive hundreds of miles just to commit a single murder, and then vanish without a trace. He buried kill kits years in advance. Plastic tubs filled with guns, silencers, zip ties, and chemicals hidden in remote areas across the country. He'd return to them years later, and no one ever knew he'd been there. Keyes didn't have a victim type. It could be a couple camping in Vermont, a man on the street, or someone alone at home. He made sure there were no connections, no witnesses, and no patterns. He called it his rule book, and for years it worked. But eventually, Keyes broke his own rules. In 2012, he kidnapped 18-year-old Samantha Koenig from a coffee stand in Anchorage, Alaska, his own city. He kept her body for days, posed her as if she were alive, and sent a photo to her family while demanding ransom using her ATM card. Surveillance footage caught him withdrawing money from multiple states. That mistake, killing close to home and using traceable cards, finally gave investigators the trail they needed. Keyes was arrested in Texas. But even then, he stayed in control. He confessed to at least 11 murders, but refused to give full names or details. And before police could learn more, he ended his life in prison, taking his secrets with him. Israel Keyes didn't want attention. He wanted mastery. And for years, he got away with it. If he hadn't slipped, he might never been caught at all. Edmund Kemper, the killer who couldn't stop talking. Kemper was 6 feet 9 inches, soft-spoken, and disturbingly articulate. His modus operandi was using his apparent likability to find his victims. Kemper's victims were often young female hitchhikers. He knew the roads around Santa Cruz, California, and used his mild demeanor to disarm them. His size helped him overpower, but it was never just about brute force. It was about domination. His method followed a haunting pattern. He'd lure them into his car, drive to a remote area, and kill them, usually by strangulation or shooting. But the most chilling part came after death. Kemper would take the bodies back to his home, the one he shared with his mother. There, he performed acts of necrophilia, dismembered them, and sometimes posed or kept body parts. He later admitted it wasn't the act of killing that satisfied him. It was what came afterward. His obsession was control, even over a lifeless body. But his murders weren't random. They escalated toward a final target. His mother. He once said all his rage was rooted in her, the woman who belittled and emotionally abused him for years. In 1973, he finally killed her. Then, in a bizarre twist, he turned himself in. Kemper didn't resist arrest. In fact, he couldn't stop talking. He gave chillingly detailed confessions and later participated in psychological interviews to help researchers understand serial killers. Unlike many killers who deny, deflect, or remain silent, Kemper opened the floodgates, exposing every twisted step of his thinking, from the first hitchhiker to the murder of his mother. Ed Kemper didn't just act on impulse. His method was clear, calculated, and terrifyingly personal, shaped by a lifelong need to reclaim power in the most grotesque way imaginable. Some killers leave behind trails of blood. Others leave behind patterns, twisted routines that, once uncovered, reveal everything about who they were. Whether it was Bundy's manipulative charm, BTK's obsession with stalking, or Kemper's calculated rage, their crimes weren't just acts of violence. Once you understand a killer's modus operandi, you start to see them for what they really are. Thank you for watching Prison Stories. If you found this breakdown disturbing but eye-opening, don't forget to like and share, and subscribe our channel to get notified for our upcoming videos.